For generations, people quietly relied on a water system so simple, so self-sustaining, that it didn't need chemicals, constant cleaning, or endless upgrades. And yet today, variations of this exact idea are restricted, discouraged, or buried under layers of regulation in many places, while entire industries profit from making water feel complicated, fragile, and dependent on products you have to keep buying. It wasn't always like this. Long before modern municipalities laid pipes beneath cities, and long before chemical treatment became the default, homesteaders, farmers, and small communities depended on systems that didn't just store water. They stabilized it, using living processes that kept it usable without constant intervention, and they did it for decades at a time without the problems most people today assume are unavoidable. So the real question isn't whether your rain barrel works, it's why the version you were taught to build fails so often. And who benefits from that failure? Because if you look at the way most people are told to set up rainwater collection today, it follows a very specific pattern. Isolate the water, seal it, filter it, treat it, monitor it, and if anything goes wrong, smell, algae, mosquitoes, intervene manually again and again, as if the system itself is inherently unstable. And that assumption is rarely questioned, but it should be. Because historically, people didn't treat stored water as something that had to be controlled into submission. They treated it as something that could regulate itself. There are records across different regions, from small European homesteads to Asian agricultural systems, showing that water storage wasn't just about containment, it was about balance. And in many cases, that balance included life inside the system itself. Not uncontrolled life, not neglect, but intentional, structured ecosystems. And these systems worked for hundreds of years. In parts of Asia, for example, rice farmers developed integrated rice fish systems over 1,000 years ago, where fish lived directly in flooded fields, consuming mosquito larvae, stirring the water, cycling nutrients, and reducing the need for external inputs like pesticides, a method that modern studies have repeatedly confirmed can significantly cut chemical use while maintaining yields. The principle wasn't complicated. Living systems resist collapse better than dead ones. But somewhere along the way, that idea was replaced. And not accidentally. Because once centralized water systems expanded, something else followed. Regulation, standardization, and eventually, restriction. In many areas today, rainwater harvesting itself has faced legal limitations, permit requirements, or outright discouragement at different points in time, often justified under public health, infrastructure protection, or water rights frameworks. But when you step back and follow the pattern, another layer starts to appear. Because decentralized water systems don't generate ongoing revenue. They don't require monthly billing, they don't depend on chemical inputs, and they don't create a need for continuous intervention products. Modern water treatment, maintenance chemicals, filtration systems, and infrastructure represent a multi-billion-dollar global industry. And while not every regulation is malicious, the incentive structure is clear. Systems that require constant input are more profitable than systems that quietly sustain themselves. So over time, the narrative shifted. Stored water became dangerous. Biological activity became contamination. And the idea of allowing controlled ecosystems inside water storage was reframed as something risky, unregulated, or outdated. Even though historically it was the opposite, because the real problem with stored water is not life, it's imbalance. And that's exactly what most modern rain barrels unintentionally create. The moment rainwater, which is relatively clean for garden use, enters a sealed static container, a chain reaction begins. Organic debris introduces nutrients, sunlight fuels algae, oxygen levels drop, and within hours, mosquitoes can detect still water and begin laying eggs, with larvae capable of hatching in as little as 24 to 48 hours in warm conditions. A single female mosquito can lay hundreds of eggs at a time, and a neglected container can produce multiple generations in a single season. This is the version people are familiar with: stagnation, smell, slimy buildup, mosquito swarms, and because that's the only version most people ever see, the solution has been framed as a battle. More screens, more treatments, more maintenance, more control. But what if that entire approach is backwards? Because if you look at older systems, they didn't fight each of these problems separately. They designed systems where those problems struggled to exist in the first place. And this is where the idea of the living rain barrel begins to surface again. Not as a new invention, but as a re-emergence of something that was always there. A living rain barrel doesn't try to exclude biology. It controls it. It selects for balance instead of sterility. And once you understand that shift, everything about water storage starts to look different. Because instead of asking how to keep water clean in the modern sense, the question becomes, how do you keep it stable? And stability comes from interaction, from movement, from controlled biological activity, from systems that regulate themselves instead of collapsing into stagnation. One of the simplest and most misunderstood elements of this system is fish, not as decoration, not as a novelty, but as functional components. Mosquito larvae develop near the surface of still water, feeding and maturing until they emerge as adults, and small fish, including common feeder goldfish, naturally consume these larvae, interrupting that life cycle before it completes. This isn't theory. It's been used as a biological control method in multiple regions, with species like Gambusia, often called mosquito fish, deployed specifically for this purpose, though their use in open ecosystems is now regulated in many places due to ecological concerns if released. But inside a contained system like a rain barrel, the principle is controlled. Fish patrol the water, they consume larvae, they create movement, and that movement alone disrupts the still conditions mosquitoes prefer. At the same time, fish contribute to nutrient cycling through their waste, which in balanced amounts becomes part of a broader ecological loop rather than a source of pollution. The result isn't sterile water, it's active water, and active water behaves differently. Mosquitoes don't thrive in it, stagnation doesn't take hold as easily, and the system begins to regulate itself in ways that feel almost invisible once it's working. But fish alone are not the system. They are one piece. Because without balance, any biological system can tip in the wrong direction, which is why design matters. Light control, for example, plays a major role in preventing algae overgrowth. Opaque or dark-colored barrels reduce sunlight penetration, limiting the energy available for algae blooms, which helps maintain clarity and prevents clogging. Temperature matters as well. Warmer water accelerates biological activity, both beneficial and harmful. So placing barrels in partial shade helps moderate extremes that could destabilize the system. Input control is another critical factor. A simple first flush diverter redirects the initial runoff from a roof, which often carries the highest load of contaminants like dust, pollen, and bird droppings, away from the barrel, improving overall water quality before it even enters the system. And then there are screens, but not for sterilization, for selection. Fine mesh prevents adult mosquitoes from laying eggs directly in the barrel while still allowing airflow and water movement, blocking disruptive inputs while allowing the system itself to function. This is the difference most people never see. Modern setups are designed to exclude everything. Older systems were designed to allow the right things in, and that distinction changes everything. Because once you stop trying to create dead water, you stop fighting an uphill battle. Dead water demands constant intervention. Living water distributes that workload across a system that is already built to handle it. And yet, this is the part that rarely gets discussed, because it doesn't fit the dominant narrative. There's no product to sell for a system that stabilizes itself, no recurring cost for a solution that reduces intervention, no infrastructure dependency for a method that works at the household level. And that raises a question that's difficult to ignore. If systems like this reduce dependence, reduce cost, and reduce maintenance, why aren't they the standard? Why are they almost never taught? Why are they often framed as unconventional, risky, or fringe? Because when you follow the pattern, the answer isn't technical, it's structural. Centralized systems benefit from dependency. Decentralized systems reduce it. And throughout history, when those two models compete, one tends to overshadow the other, not always through direct prohibition, but through regulation, narrative, and gradual erasure. That doesn't mean every restriction is intentional, but it does mean the outcome is consistent. Knowledge that doesn't align with the dominant system fades, even when it works, even when it worked for centuries. And that's exactly what happened here. Because the living rain barrel isn't new. It's a simplified version of a much older idea. That water, when treated as a living system rather than a static resource, becomes more resilient, more stable, and more useful over time. And once you see it, it becomes difficult to unsee. Because suddenly, the problems people associate with rain barrels stop feeling inevitable. They start feeling like design flaws. The mosquitoes aren't unavoidable. They're a symptom of still, unbalanced water. The smell isn't random. It's a sign of stagnation. The maintenance isn't inherent. It's a result of fighting against processes that could be working for you instead. And when that shifts, the entire system changes. Water stops being something you store and manage. It becomes something that participates, something that supports your garden as part of a loop instead of existing as a separate input. And that loop matters more than it seems, because as water systems become more strained globally through changing rainfall patterns, increased demand, and aging infrastructure, decentralized solutions are no longer just convenient. They're becoming necessary, but only if they work. And a barrel that degrades over time isn't resilience, it's temporary storage. A barrel that stabilizes itself, that maintains usability, that reduces intervention. That's something else entirely. That's a system. But like any system, it requires awareness. Fish need oxygen. Water needs movement. Extreme heat or cold can disrupt balance. Maintenance doesn't disappear. It changes. Periodic inspection, seasonal cleaning, responsible use. This isn't about ignoring risk. It's about designing around it. And for those who don't want to use fish, alternatives like biological controls exist, including naturally occurring bacteria used in mosquito management that target larvae without harming plants or most beneficial organisms. Again, the goal isn't perfection, it's balance. Because once balance is in place, the system begins to carry itself. And that's the part that was almost lost, not because it didn't work or failed to deliver results, but because it didn't align with the systems that gradually replaced it. Systems that were built around constant consumption, ongoing dependency, and centralized control, where solutions are expected to require continuous input, continuous oversight, and continuous cost, rather than quietly sustaining themselves in the background without demanding attention. Because it didn't fit that model, and because it didn't depend on external products, infrastructure, or intervention to remain functional, it slowly faded from common knowledge. Not disappearing completely, but receding just enough that most people would grow up never encountering it, never seeing it demonstrated, and never realizing that an alternative way of thinking about water had ever existed in the first place. And if something this simple, this practical, and this effective could be overlooked for so long, not because it stopped working, but because it no longer fit the dominant structure, then it raises a much bigger question about how many other systems have followed the same path, quietly replaced, simplified, or forgotten, despite offering more resilience than the solutions that took their place. Because if a single rain barrel, redesigned as a living system, can shift from being a constant maintenance problem into a stable, self-supporting resource, then it suggests that there are likely many other systems that have been reduced into less powerful versions of themselves over time, waiting to be rediscovered by people willing to look beyond the default approach. If this opened something new, or maybe brought back an idea that always felt like it should work but never quite had the language around it, then there's a lot more like this waiting to be uncovered. Subscribe to Heritage Harvest and stay connected, because some of the most useful systems were never replaced. They were simply forgotten.